I'm Tony Tolsha. I'm a medical oncologist and have been doing phase 1 clinical studies almost exclusively now for 30 years. And so I've had the opportunity of seeing some of the evolution that's happened. When I began my career in what had worked and served the oncology community quite well for 30 or 40 years was the standard Fibonacci 3+3 standard. And that was used and generally accepted in almost every single study. In the 90s, Richard Simon came along with a publication that did change things. It was the accelerated titration designs that were published in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute. Now, first and foremost, fewer patients are treated at subtherapeutic doses. One has to be mindful that these patients have volunteered. They oftentimes have failed all standard therapy. There is the potential that we will complete dose escalation sooner. That's because we have fewer patients. And of course, we don't have the issue associated with small increments that are associated with the Fibonacci levels. And so we will get through to the maximum tolerated dose or even exceed that in a shorter number of dose levels. Now, what are some of the bad aspects, or at least from a clinical standpoint? Well, first and foremost, both usually require statistical input, and that adds cost to the conduct of the study. For many of these new Bayesian designs, we have to have all the data into the electronic data capture system for the statistical review. Now, this is an important complexity because in our current system, we really don't have a lot of good data transfer systems. And so we're always waiting for data to go in so the statistician will have sufficient amount of data to help guide the dose escalation meeting. And that means the sites have to work to get the data in quickly. And if some of those sites are slow getting the data in, then that can delay the whole process. It's important to understand that phase 1 studies are routinely multi-centers. But if you're only having a single slot at each dose level for 2 or 3 dose levels, you've got a lot of open sites that are not actually able to put any patients on. So they are active sites you've paid for, and they're sitting there in the wings waiting to put patients on. So the solution, I always say, is not to discourage your sites, but really for dose escalation, if you're using one of these designs, you should have fewer sites. And in fact, it makes perfect sense, both from a budgetary standpoint, because adding sites and monitoring those sites costs money. The other thing is if you have a large number of sites and limited number of slots, the information you're getting is anecdotal from any one investigator.